Keep it real simple, keep it real simple. Bring everything right back to ground zero. Cause it all comes down to this: love God and love people. We're living in a world that keeps breaking, but if we wanna find a way to change it, it all comes down to this: love God and love people.
All right. Good morning, Simple Church. How y'all doing? Hey, one more time. You got to give it up not only for the band, but look, for you. $5 million+. Give it up, yeah. 4,087 or 4,083 families. Phenomenal. Great job. I'm Bryan. I'm the care pastor, as many of you know, probably already know this. Spent this last week at Lighthouse Family Retreats. Is a family retreat that we go and are a part of that is for families dealing with childhood cancer. And I brought along a few pictures just to give you an idea. I mean, kids were just everywhere. They were phenomenal, and they have stuff for kids to hang out and games to play, crafts to do, and all this kind of stuff. Just an incredible time. This next picture up, these are our people. These are our people, porters. They're there. If y'all happen to see him, he became known as Mr. Rufus for whatever reason all week. So we had Mr. Rufus's neighborhood, and they would all come together. That's a SNL slide if you remember that. And then this final last picture is every man's point of view driving home, right, guys? Yeah. And truth be told, I did seek permission from my wife before I shared that picture. But a phenomenal week. We were actually a part of a group called Common Ground where Perry and I met with just the moms and dads. And it's just an incredible time to watch them as they navigate through issues like rest, joy, restoration, and hope. And as we begin to just talk through that and just to watch them ministering, because so many of these moms and dads have not been with other moms and dads that are in the same situation, except maybe in the hospital. So they've not really been able to talk about it. And it was at times very raw, very vulnerable, but God did just an incredible thing with that time. And we're excited to go back again. And you'll hear more about it as time goes on. But as we begin this morning, we got any marathoners in the room? Anybody? I got to go like this because sometimes it's hard to. Anybody want to admit to have run a marathon? Wow, we are all like, I'm not raising my hand. Trust me, I didn't get this body watching TV. But yeah, and you may remember or you may not. My dad was a marathoner growing up, so my take on marathons are really different because as a child, like even like as far back as 7th and 8th grade, I remember I had to go watch my dad run a marathon. Okay, it's 26.2 miles. Okay, you see them when they start, you see them when they end. The rest of the time it's like watching paint dry. And so you just got to do that. But I was reading and I saw that there was a marathon that was run, and was the fastest recorded marathon ever. And it was run by the greatest marathoner of all time, 34-year-old Kenyan runner named Eliud, I always get this wrong, Eliud Kipchoge. So he's from Kenya, so he probably messes Bryan Reed up too. But on October the 12th, 2019, in Vienna, he completed 26.2 miles in 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 0.4 seconds. 159.4. To give you an idea of what that is, if we all lined up on the start line and we ran 100-meter sprints, which is a little bit longer than 100 yards, we'd have to run those sprints in just about 17 seconds for 422 times in a row to match that pace. And that is crazy. Now, unfortunately, it was not an official recorded record because of a couple things. One, he had a group of runners that ran with him. They call it the peloton, but periodically these runners would come in and they would change out along the course. It was just as they went and found the flattest, straightest course they could. And so they had these men that would keep them on pace. But then also they had this, which I thought was kind of a crazy looking thing. But he had a laser on the back of a pickup truck that the truck moved at that pace. And as long as he stayed within that laser beam where it was hitting, without looking directly in the laser, people, remember that. But he would finish the course. And because he had those things and were given to him and it was set up, it was not. But guys, let's go ahead and be honest. Can any of us run 100 meters in 17 seconds? I mean, there's a couple of you in here are. But here's what I did find out. I found out 2 other guys that couldn't do it either. Now check out this video.
Here, son. Cowboys, Chiefs. Watch this time. Watch this time.
3, 2, 1, go!
Yeah, did you recognize those guys? Well, that was Justin and then Chris Robley, and that was a few years back. We went to the NFL experience over in Dallas, and they had this little deal set up. That's a 40-yard dash. It was a video wall that went down there. If you saw the guy in the red shirt on the video, that was Tyreek Hill, who at that time held the record for the fastest 40 in the NFL Combine. And he would take off with them, and as you noticed, he quickly went out of the picture. As I was videoing those 2 guys going, I was like, where'd Tyreek go? He gone. Another thing for you close observers, you may have noticed, Chris Robley, who actually won it, he pulled up. He blew a hammy probably about 10 yards out from the finish. And then Justin just blew it all. So, but that was their run. There's another famous run. There's another famous run that's recorded in the Bible. And we know it as the story of the prodigal son. And my prayer today for you is as you hear this story, and many of you probably said, been there, done that, saw it. I remember I was in vacation Bible school, or I was in Sunday school, or maybe I've heard it read before. And we automatically just kind of jump through the details. But my prayer today is that you would see and understand it in a whole different light. But first we got to go through some background. Where did it start? Where did it come from? You go to Luke chapter 15, verse 1, it says this: now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. So tax collectors and sinners. If you notice, the tax collectors kind of got their own designation, right? I don't hope anybody here works for the IRS, right? Nobody? We're good with that? How about some of you guys that live in Bossier Parish that got your property taxes, say, the end of 2023? Were you ready to put them in their own category of tax collectors? Probably so. Sorry, Bobby Evanson, didn't mean to say that out loud. But they were gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and he eats with them. This man welcomes sinners and he eats with them. And that was the problem that Jesus was addressing. The problem was that Jesus was hanging out with sinners. And the Pharisees and all the Church of C's people and all those people that got into that, they were the ones that would sit around. It says that the Pharisees muttered, and no doubt they probably just sat there and they were kind of like, they may have sounded kind of like Coach O, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But the Pharisees and the keepers of the law muttered, and Jesus told a story. He tells a story which we commonly know as a parable. And a parable is this: it's a short narrative that uses everyday situations to convey a spiritual or a moral lesson. A short story that they knew. Everyone in Jesus' culture, when they gathered around Jesus to begin to hear, and Jesus heard the Pharisees, no doubt, sitting over there going, why is he hanging out with the sinners? Jesus said, I'm going to tell you a story. And each person in that crowd knew exactly what was going on and what was locked in. And each of those stories that he told, there were 3 of them that really make up the one parable as to why Jesus was doing that. Each one of them had 3 parts. It was basically someone or something was lost, it is found, we have a party. Something is lost, it is found, that person or thing is found, and then we have a celebration. The first one he talks about, he talks about, hey, there was this shepherd, and no doubt everybody in the crowd knew what it was like to be a shepherd. And he said he had 100 sheep, and one of them loses, walks away, and no doubt he was counting, and he got to 99. I don't know how many times he would count again and try to go. He said, wouldn't he leave those 99 to go find one? And he said, then when he finds him, won't he kind of bring him back, get his friends together, and just celebrate? I mean, no doubt he would be there, and he would go, and I'm sure when he brought all his friends back together, it's kind of like you guys that fish a lot do when you start telling the ones of catching the big one. You know what I'm saying? He would get together, and he's like, yeah, man, I was on the north side back over there, and there was this just sharp drop off, and the sheep was like, man, and all of a sudden I heard him, and I got him, and I reached down there, and I pulled him up, and I put him on my shoulders, and here he is. Let's have a party. Second part, he speaks about a woman who's lost a coin, a woman who had 10 coins. And we sit back and read and go, oh, that's okay. But listen, in that culture, men did not speak publicly to or about women. And Jesus, who did more to elevate the status of women than anyone else in his time, check it out, read it. It talks about a woman who had 10 coins. And he said she loses one of them. And it was probably coins that may have been in like either a necklace or some type of a head dressing that she would wear. And there were 10 of them, and she loses one of them. And the significance of that was those 10 coins were likely the dowry that her father had given her to give to her future husband. Ladies, it'd be the equivalent of you losing a stone out of the old engagement ring. And what she did is, it says she literally tore the house apart to find that one coin. And when she found the coin, it says she got her friends together and they had a party. So he moves on to the third part, and this is a story that we've heard before, but follow with me and stay with me. It said, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. Give me my share of the estate. For us, sitting back and hearing that, you would go, got it, understand. I remember my parents, when I was probably, I guess, in my 30s, my dad was just getting ready to retire, and they basically gave me this statement of, look, me and my sister, look, we're spending y'all's inheritance, so if you think there's going to be a lot left over, we're going out of town. And we're like, got you, Dad. And we would think of it that way. But in Jesus' time, in their culture, if a child said to a father, I want my piece of the pie, it was in essence saying, Dad, I wish you were dead. And because you're dead to me, I want what's mine. I want my share of the estate. And as we hear it said, Jesus said so, he divided the property between them. Text goes on, not long after that, the younger son packed up everything he had and he set off for a distant country. And there he squandered his wealth in wild living. He squandered his wealth in wild living. And you know you can get the picture. And they understood that too. When they first heard him say distant country, they knew immediately, oh, he's going over to those people. And he went over there, and it says that he had everything, and he was the party dude. And he knew that. And people would come around, and he would hang out, drinks are on me. I got this for you. We're going to come over to my place. We got a party. And Jesus continues the story and says this, after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country. And he began to be in need. Have you ever been there? You ever been to that point where you're like, you had a lot and then you didn't? And maybe if you've been there and you understand that, because I experienced that one time in my life. Well, I literally was 7 days away from losing my house. And I just remember that feeling of worthlessness, that feeling of just not being able to do anything. They said the son began to be in need. And so he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country. And listen to what he did. That citizen sent him out to his fields to feed pigs. And we go, okay, farmer. Noble job, noble tradition. He's a farmer. Remember it said he went to a distant country? No doubt they knew that he was a Jew. And for Jews to be with pigs was unclean. So I'm sure this citizen said, hey, buddy, watch what I do to this guy. Yeah, I got you, job. I got pigs out there in the field. Go take care of them. And so he walked away, and he goes, and it says he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. He was alone. And maybe at this point in the story, no doubt people in the crowd begin to realize that you can be in a crowd and still be lonely. And maybe today you're sitting here and you're like, hey, that's me. That's me. I've been that lonely person. I am that lonely person. Loneliness is a big deal. Matter of fact, our own Surgeon General, I saw this the other day. Check this out. The lack of social connection is as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. If you read the bar graph a little bit longer, it's about the equivalent of drinking 6 alcoholic drinks in one day, each day. Loneliness is a pandemic in our society now, so we understand what it means. Most of us do. And we can connect with that. Because here's what happens. When your life revolves around what you do instead of who you are, it can be hard to know who's really walking with you and who would still want to be your friend once you lost your mojo. Maybe you're sitting here this morning and you're thinking, you know what, I've done that. I went and my plan was I'm going to climb that ladder to success. And I'm going to be at the top of the ladder and I'm going to knock off whoever's up top. I'm going to knock people off coming down. And you've done that for year after year after year. And now all of a sudden you realize that your ladder's been leaning up against the wrong building all the time. And there's nobody around to help you. Your spouse is gone because you had your priorities. Your kids don't call you dad anymore because they got a new one. And you're left lonely. And this young man, after spending everything he had and having nothing and being the ridicule of a pig farmer to his people, I'm sure he would think every day, oh, man, I just hope my dad doesn't see it. I hope they never know that I've done this. It says this in verse 17. When he came to his senses. When he came to his senses, he realized, and he said this, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I've got this idea. He said, I'm going to set out. I'm going to go back to my father, and I'm going to say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Just make me one of your hired servants. And when they read that part where the son said, I've sinned against heaven and against you, no doubt everybody in that circle knew what was going on. All those that had crowded around Jesus because they had grown up in the Jewish culture, and as kids they had been read stories from the Talmud, they had been read stories from the Pentateuch, from the old writings of their people of what happened, and they had heard that before because they had heard it said, and as they told the story of Pharaoh and the plagues. Because Pharaoh said those exact words to Moses. Hey, Moses, he brought him in. He's like, look, I've sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven and against you. Now get rid of the plagues. Please, get rid of them. Had he really changed his life? Had he really changed his world and what he was doing? No. And no doubt when they heard the young man, as Jesus told the story, when he heard him say, I've sinned against heaven and against you, they thought, oh, okay. I guess, I mean, you got to say something. So he starts the long walk home, no doubt rehearsing his speech. He starts the long walk, and he decided, you know, it would be better to be a slave and hang out with pigs than to than to go on. So look, here's my speech. I've sinned against heaven and against you. He said, just make me one of your hired servants. He goes on and says, but while he was still a long way off, something happens. And I think if we've read the story or heard the story before of this prodigal son, we have this picture of the long way off. I mean, it's this picture of dad sitting on the porch, maybe in his rocking chair, and just looking, and all of a sudden, oh, look, there's my boy out there, pokes his head out from the trees. We think it's kind of like maybe a long sidewalk or a long dirt road that just came up because, I mean, he owned a lot of stuff. But what was likely was that they lived in a village because for safety reasons, all these families would live in villages. And so the father, on a regular basis, would go and he would look a long way off. I don't know if he would leave his house and leave the village and go and just look where the direction his son came from. But Jesus continues the story, and he said, when he was a long way off, his father saw him, and he was filled with compassion. Now, how you view God at that moment, if you're a dad even, how you view the father's relationship with his son, you might not have that word in there, compassion. You probably may have when he was filled with anger, when he was filled with disappointment. Or maybe it was just when he was filled with nothing. It said, when he saw him, he was filled with compassion for his son, and he ran to his son, and he threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. Here's the question. Excuse me. Why did he run? Why did the father run? You said, well, you just wanted to get to his son that quick. It's true, but here's the deal. Here's what we've learned. Here's what I learned as I was getting ready for this. In Jewish culture at that time, it was humiliating. It was inappropriate for a man to run, at which point I'd say, I'm in that club. But for a man to run at that time, you know, they wore sandals and they had long robes, and they would take that robe and they would stuff it in their belt, and then they would take off. If they had to run, they would take off and do that, and it exposed their legs. And in their culture at that time, it was inappropriate for men to expose their legs to anyone else in public, in a public setting. But the dad said, I'm running. The dad said, I am taking off. And I'm running to him. And here's why he was doing that. I'm running to meet my son because this. Dr. Kenneth Bailey is a scholar, a New Testament scholar, and he's written about this whole ceremony that happened most likely. It is called the Kazah ceremony, the Keza ceremony. It was basically the cutting off. And what would happen was this. Any Jewish boy who had gone and spent his inheritance in another country among the Gentiles would face the ceremony if he decided to return home. And there's no doubt the son knew that. There's no doubt the son knew that. He knew that he would have to face that ceremony. And what would happen is the leaders of the village would meet him outside the gate, and they would have these large earth pots, these large clay pots, and sometimes they would put burnt nuts or corn in it, something burned that would just smell bad. And when the boy would return, when the young man would return, they would listen to his story, they would hear what happened, and if they deemed it necessary, they would take it and they would throw it down on the ground and break it at his feet and say, you are Kazah, you are cut off, and you are to never return to this village again. And from that point on, the village would have nothing to do with that man. The father, he had to stay home. The mom could come. She could plead for her son and at least maybe tell him one last thing at the gate of how much she loved him, as moms do. The father had to stay home because, don't miss this, because the word of the father trumped the village. And this father at this time, when he saw his son a long way off, he knew he had to run. he had to run because he had to beat his son to the gates. And he did. The son's plan was just simply this. He knew he was going to have to face the ceremony, but he thought in his own mind, look, maybe I can just if I tell him my story and say, look, I'm going to be a hired servant, so after a long time, I will have paid off my debt. Can I still come in? But the son never got to say that. And the father met him at the gate. And because he'd been watching the road, he had to beat his son to the gate before the village people got there, not the band. And he said this. But the father said to his servants, I want you to be quick. I want you to bring the best robe. I want you to put it on him. I want you to take a ring and I want you to put it on his finger. A ring was a symbol of belonging. It was a symbol that you lived in a family. It was a symbol of authority. I want you to take that ring and put it on his finger. I want you to put sandals on his feet. I want you to bring the fatted calf and kill it. It's important to know that. It wasn't just any calf, it was a fatted calf. And I really believe, because of the belief of the father, that his son would return, that he kept going out and saying, make him eat more. I want that calf ready for the day my son comes home. And he said, for this son of mine was dead, and now he's alive. He was lost, and he's found. So they began to celebrate. They say music is a window to our soul. I want you to hear this song, and then I'll be back to wrap up.
Thought the world had something special I was missing. Daddy told me not to chase it, didn't listen. Fell downhill a mile a minute. Before I knew it, I was living in a pigsty, a long way from home. And I went running like a rambo, racked up debts I couldn't pay. I went dancing with the devil, with one foot down in the grave. And how the heaven did I get here, when threw it all away? All I'm giving you is trouble, all you given me is grace. And the freedom I was chasing felt like prison. Lord, I've done so many things, wish I didn't. And after all the risky business, could I ever be forgiven? I'm afraid to even ask to come back home. 'Cause I went running like a Rambo, racked up debts I couldn't pay. I went dancing with the devil, with one foot down in the grave. And how the heaven did I get here, when threw it all away? All I'm giving you is trouble, all you've given me is grace. Giving me is grace. When I sobered up, came back to my senses, I was too far gone to make up all the distance. Gambled all that I'd been given. I was broke, alone, and wishing that I could turn around and couldn't come back home. When I heard the sound of footsteps down the road, you came running like a Rambo, paid off debts I couldn't pay. You went dancing with the devil, sent that liar to his grave. Now that heaven did I get here, where every sin has been erased. All you've given you is trouble, all you've given me is grace. Give me grace. There was something in the marrow, always coursing through my veins. But buried deeper than the rubble is my daddy's DNA.
You know, the Bible says that the one thing that we all have in common is there's going to be a time when we die. It says, the way he says it in the New Testament is, it's appointed unto man and woman once to die, and after that the judgment. And I know we get all this picture sometime of the pearly gates sitting up there, and we think, oh, I'm just going to go to the pearly gates and see St. Peter. I mean, we make jokes about it. There's an LSU fan and an Alabama fan go to the pearly gates, and they blah, blah, blah. But according to God's word, we're appointed once to die, and after that, there's going to be a point where we're going to be judged. So my question this morning for you is simply this. Are you going to give them the Pharaoh talk? Are you going to say, hey, man, God, I did some bad things, and this is where I got to explain myself. You got to understand this. It really wasn't my fault. It was really her fault. But, this happened. But, hey, look, God, I did these other good things over here. Are you going to give them the Pharaoh talk? Or are you just going to sit there? Because what happened over 2,000 years ago, what happened nearly 2,000 years ago was that Jesus hung on a cross. And he was literally cut off. He took all the blame, all the beating for not only their sin, but my sin and your sin for each one of us. That's why God had to run. And what will happen is God will come running at just the right time. And he's going to stand there and he's going to say, look, because of my son, because of my DNA is in your blood. Come on in. Put that robe on your shoulder, put that ring on your finger, shod your feet with the gospel of peace, and you're going to walk in and you're going to be in eternity. And that's why God ran. Would you pray with me? Father, I just pray that we can understand the truth of your word, that when we were a long way off, you saw us. And Father, you came running. You came running to keep us from getting what we deserve. You came running to stand in there and say, that's my child. And because of that, Father, I pray that we can live our lives in a unique and in a different way beginning today. That as we look out and we rub shoulders with other people, that we can see them as your children as well. And we can know that because of you running, we are part of the family. And that makes a difference in the way we live now. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.